Hi everyone, this is Dylan, and this week on Viral Spirits, we're talking about stencils. So, before I get to the how-to with the stencils this week, this is actually our first episode that's in the studio, and I just wanted to greet you all from here and let you know that the stuff around I decided to show you is actually future projects for us, including this giant alligator head that Jordan's sister gifted us all a while ago, and I'm excited to give it a little bit of an upgrade. We won't go into details about all of them, but it's just fun to have them out there for future use. Alrighty, so stencils are a wonderful way to decorate furniture, walls. A lot of street artists like to use them for different projects, and we actually used these ones here, just a Starburst, very classic atomic era shape. We did that opposite of the custom mural in our living room. It's super fun looking and fresh, and yeah, so this is one of several different types of stencils. You have a single layer, simple, not much to it kind of thing. There's multi-layered stencils as well. If you wanted to make this a multi-layer, you could add a slip that had highlights to the actual shape. A lot of fun there. And then the other kind that are most often used are repeating stencils that have a pattern to them. And they have special markers to indicate where to start on the wall and all that kind of stuff. But this is just our first single-use one that we've used in the home, and I plan on using plenty more. This won't be the last stencil tutorial that you see. So yeah, to get started, I have the actual stencils, a little bit of poster board just because we're in the studio and I've already done the wall itself, so simple there. A couple of different paints just so you can see the color difference. Our sponges and brushes. I typically use brushes. You can use a sponge. I don't recommend it. We'll get to that when it comes time to apply things. I also have, just in case, a dowel rod. I'll get to that later. A wet rag. Anytime you make a mistake or need to clean up something, always good to have a wet rag around with any paint project. And last but kind of the most important part to a stencil is having something absorbent like paper towels, because you need to do what's called unloading the brush before you actually apply the paint, and we'll get to that right now actually. So everyone, this is for our stencils. We actually have a couple of stencil brushes. They have a harder, stiffer brush set. And before you use any of your brushes or any of your sponges or rollers, always rinse them out. You will want a damp brush anytime you're doing a painting project because it prevents the paint from seeping in too deep to the brush and not making it usable again. So yeah, like I said, these are specifically made for stenciling. There aren't the only things that you can use for stencils. Really, the best thing you can do is probably spray paint, but that's not conducive for indoor living or indoor projects. Stencil brushes are classic, stiffer brushes. So the first thing you do is you'll get the paint on, no problem there. Brush off excess the first time especially. And then here I have extra paper towels. This is super important because if you were to just use the paint that you have on there, even after brushing off some of the excess, it's too gloopy. You push it down and you're gonna end up with edges that aren't crisp. You have to unload the brush onto an absorbent piece of paper towel or old rag that you can use. so that you're not having a goopy mess when you go to lift the actual decal. And then as you can see, when I'm starting, I'm going directly up and down motion. You go at an edge like this, you're just gonna encourage the paint to seep down underneath that stencil. You don't want that. I have a dowel rod here because for some shapes and sizes, it's best to have an extra little hand there of force to hold down the lip of it so it doesn't come rushing up and you get paint underneath. So a dowel rod's a really cost-effective way of keeping your hands clean throughout the process. That fun pink. Both of these colors were used on our living room, and it's always good to have extra for touch-ups and for fun projects like this. See all that goop? You gotta unload it. Make sure you're either using a separate paper towel or a separate part of the paper towel so you're not mixing your colors, unless of course that's intentional. Okay, I unloaded the brush and now we're just gonna go on same as before, just straight up and down. It's smaller so I don't need my dowel rod, and that's just a personal preference too. You don't need a dowel rod. If you find that the stencil works well for you, then it works well for you. And yeah. Now that right there is a good heavy coat. It may have been too heavy. We'll see when we pull it up. Whenever you go to start on a surface, it's important to test it on something that may not be seen, especially a part of a wall. That way you get a good practice round in, but you also get an idea of how well the stencil works. But for this last star, I wanted to show you what you can do with a sponge. It's tricky because the whole point of stenciling is not to use too much paint, but sponges are absorbent, so they hold a lot of extra paint when you have them. Always rinse off before you start with just some water so that the sponge isn't super absorbent. And then use whatever paint colors you want. The reason that I wanted to use a sponge is I wanted to show you what you could do to start a blend if you're all right, not bad. Yeah, these stencils, you can tell I've used them to all end. I could definitely go back and clean this off with a little bit of paint thinner, but it was a good example nonetheless. This turned out really good, just except for towards the end here. I can always go back with a line brush and clean this up. I cleaned up a couple on our wall, but for the most part they turned out crisp. And it just comes down to, it's an older stencil. I've used it quite a bit. And this one, as I said, in the actual doing it, I was very heavy-handed with the pink, just to show you an example. But here's the problem with the sponge as well. Even as light as I was with that purple, you still find it seeping under the stencil quite a bit. And that's why I always recommend use a stencil brush first. There you have it, guys. That's our simple how-to on how to use a stencil. I highly recommend adapting this for your own use at home. Be on the lookout for our Etsy shop. We'll have custom stencils out on there. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on Instagram at Viral Spirits. And of course, in the comment section, let us know, what do you want to hear from us? What kind of tutorials do you like to see? What about the home buying process you want to know? We are excited to share more with you, and until next week.